Hello and welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys, a former D1 Hooper, current high school coach, teacher, husband, and father of 3 amazing kids.
And I'm Omari Sanko for the second, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press, Renaissance grad, Michigan State grad, and afraid to see this first game for the Lions today. We're recording before the game, so I was like, if we record after, I could put some of my Lions angst in there, but we'll save that for next week.
I'm Michigan State grad. I haven't followed their college football season thus far. I assume they're undefeated since you finally decided to admit that you were a Michigan State grad.
They are undefeated. They've got some positional stuff to work out based on that Akron game yesterday. But I feel like it's not a Michigan State. It's not a good Michigan State season until there's some sort of quarterback battle. So could be a good omen, could be a bad omen. I guess we'll see where this team is at around Halloween.
That must be a thing with Michigan college football teams, right? I know this is a basketball podcast, but it does kind of apply. I'm so glad that Cade McNamara versus whoever the other quarterback is for the University of Michigan, because all those Cade tweets when they're talking about not Cade Cunningham just confuse the heck out of me.
It confuses me too, because I was not watching the Michigan game yesterday, and I guess JJ McCarthy is their QB now. But I see people just tweet Cade this, Cade that, and it always like skews negative. And like I was not even on Twitter yesterday, but I opened the app and somebody's like, it's just like a really negative Cade tweet. And I'm like, what did Cade Cunningham do? And then you always have to remember, no, it's not Cade Cunningham, it's Cade McNamara, and maybe after this week, we won't have the Cade confusion anymore. It sounds like Cade McNamara is being faded out. So
I'm sure he's a great young man. I'm sure he's a really good player. I have no idea, but I assume he's going to be entering the transfer portal maybe by the time we're recording this on Sunday morning. But more importantly, Omari, the statement jerseys dropped. The Detroit Pistons tweeted it out. Twitter blew up. I don't care. Just like I didn't care about the Teals. So that's my thoughts on it. But we wanted to give you the floor to talk about the statement jerseys that were released this week.
Well, I do care. I think jerseys are fun. And I tweeted when they came out, I thought they were okay. I kind of still feel like they're okay. Like, I like that they're black. I think that's just a completely new direction for a Pistons jersey. I don't know if they've ever had black jerseys before. Kind of like last year with the red ones they had with the hints of teal. I think they'll look better in person. So we'll just have to see.
What's your critique? Because I saw somebody the other day completely recreated them. They had changed the stripe and moved the numbers, and I think it says DP, and so then they put Detroit instead. What is it not creative enough? What is the issue with the statement jerseys for you?
Yeah, I don't know if there's like an issue per se, and I'm definitely not like a jersey expert as far as how you help a jersey pop a little bit more. The edit I saw online, Conrad Burry, I feel like a few times a year he'll tweet out these different Pistons jerseys, whether it's a brand new one or just tweaking a previous design. And like you said, he moved the number to the right on top of the stripes instead of on the left underneath the blue and red stripe in the middle of the jersey. And just spelled Detroit all the way out instead of DET. And I actually do kind of like that more. I think just having Detroit spelled all the way out just reads a little bit more clean. Again, it's not a huge deal. Like, I don't think it takes the jersey from like a 7 to a 10 or anything, but I thought it was a nice tweak. So we'll just have to see how they look in person. I like when jerseys do something new. Like, I think a lot of fans would just say, I just want them to stick with the blue or the white or whatever. I'll say just go in crazy directions. If you want a purple Pistons jersey, like, let's see a purple jersey.
Stop.
Let's see pink Pistons jerseys. Let's just put all these colors out here and see what happens. Maybe not green or anything like that has associations with like the Celtics or Lakers or anything, but like as far as every other color, I say go for it.
I can mess with some pink ones. What's funny, Omari, I was telling you this, all 3 games I'm coming to in Detroit this year are going to be either statement or teal jerseys. So the game in November turns out to be one of the statement games against the Celtics. And then the back-to-back home games in April, I believe, are both teal jersey games. So everybody's gonna call me out saying that I don't care, but then the 3 games I ended up coming to are all gonna involve these jerseys that were released for this season. So
Bryce is like, I don't care. I don't care about these jerseys. I'm just so happy to be going to the games where they're bringing the special jerseys out. Bryce is claiming he doesn't have sources in the Nike community who are telling him when these jerseys are coming out. So
I have one source in the NBA, Omari, and you don't tell me anything. So unless you leak it to me, I don't get to know. But mentioning and bringing up the games, we're talking all about the lineups on this episode, Omari. And the lineup you absolutely have to start with, talking about the Detroit Pistons. What starting lineup are we going to see opening night from the Detroit Pistons? What do we think they will do? Not what we think we would do. We're going to start with what do we think Dwayne Casey and the organization will do?
Yeah, I mean, I think really since 2020, since they shifted from less win now mode to we're doing like this extended rebuild, we've seen some consistency for rookies ready to play. Now they're going to get the starting assignment. I know Sadiq Bey came off the bench those first 2 games, but once they realized, he can shoot, the shot translated. Bumped into the starting lineup. Killian was a day 1 starter as well. So you just go down the list and Cade Cunningham's going to start. That's not great. I mean, that's the easy one. Isaiah Stewart's going to start and Sadiq Bey is going to start. I think those 3 guys is pretty locked in at this point. What's tough, I do think there are a couple coin flips in that lineup. I guess one, Jaden Ivey. I think if you go the same way with Killian being a day 1 starter and then Cade being a day 1 starter, you probably put Ivy in that group as well. Everything I've heard suggests he's had a pretty good summer. And his game, of course, I think one of the biggest tasks next season is seeing how he fits with Cade Cunningham. So you might as well prioritize that day 1, right? Like, why make Jaden Ivey wait 30 games to earn it? So I would assume he's going to start. But again, I could also see Alec Burks starting if he wants shooting or whatever. And then that second big man spot is interesting as well. And I would guess that it would be Marvin Bagley III, given that he's young. He just got extended. He had good chemistry with Cade last season and the rest of the guards, Killian as well. I would guess it would also be Marvin. I don't know if you disagree here at all, Bryce, but if I had to guess, I think it would just be those 5 guys.
Yeah, I think we're exactly on the same page with who I think we'll see and who the Pistons will go with. I think it's going to be Cade, Ivy, Bey, Stu, and Marvin Bagley III. I don't see a lineup that really goes anywhere other than that. What would you personally like? Is you brought up some guys, some Alec Burks. There's Nerlens Noel is out there. Even Jalen Duren. He was a lottery pick, even though I've talked about him maybe playing some G League time. I do think those 3 guys are locks, the 3 you brought up. But there is some wiggle room because there's versatility. I think Alec Burks is in play. I think Isaiah Livers could be in play. I do think Nerlens Noel or Kelly Olynyk. If you had to guess, which one of those guys would you think has the best chance of cracking the starting lineup along with the 3 that we've mentioned?
I would think that you would probably have to prioritize shooting if you're not going with that initial lineup. So maybe if Isaiah Stewart's not a knockdown shooter or at least a willing shooter, in the sense that he's taking a few a game and knocking them down at least a 32% clip. That probably creates lineup issues because now you're like, well, can we play 2 non-shooting bigs together? And you can, especially, since the organization still doesn't have a playoff mandate, you can do that. But from a spacing standpoint, I think that just kind of makes life harder for everyone else. So at that point, you're probably looking at Isaiah Stewart opening games as a 5 instead of 4. And you mentioned Isaiah Livers. You could make him the power forward. I don't know how likely that is day 1, but over the course of the season, I think he could probably make a good case for himself as a starter. You could place Sadiq Bey at the 4. We saw him, play 4 last season with Jeremy Grant out, and he looked pretty good. He's sort of a burly 6'8" guy. So defensively, maybe you want him more as a 4 than a 3 on defense anyway. That's probably the flex spot, I think. Is Isaiah Stewart a shooter? If so, you can play him for big. If not, you need to keep him at the 5 and maybe open the game going small, which is what I would do if, Isaiah Stewart's not knocking down threes yet.
Yeah, so as I went through these, because Wes put in there, what are some lineups they could do but shouldn't do as well, what I found was a lot of it revolved around the shooting, Amari. You put too much shooting in the starting lineup, and now you don't have a lot of shooting in the second unit, playing with Killian Hayes and maybe a big that can't shoot as well. The other thing with Stu at the 5, I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this, personally, and maybe what you feel like the organization thinks. If Stu's at the 5, and let's say you go even the Cade, Ivey, Bay, Livers, Stu lineup, there's not really a lob threat to play with Cade Cunningham in that lineup. Stu is a role guy. It's more of those highway screens. I know he can catch and finish, but it's not the same thing as Marvin Bagley III or Jalen Duren. Do you see issues with that? Would you have major qualms about them not having that lob threat in there or putting too much shooting in the starting lineup?
I think you can, over the course of the game, just the way this roster is constructed, you're going to always be giving something up. So it's okay. But we don't have a lob threat, but defensively, we set the tone that way, and Isaiah Stewart can rebound as well. Because the issue was that none of the lob threats on the roster, when Nerlens Noel is probably the only one who's like a proven defensive contributor. Like, you can play him and you're going to get at least average defense as a rim protector. The thing with him is just his health. And also, we've talked about sort of him and Duren as well. Like, which one do you play in which situations? Do they prioritize Duren? Short-term and long-term, given that he's the 13th overall pick. So maybe you don't necessarily prioritize that lob threat early on, but your first substitution can be, okay, we're putting in Bagley for Isaiah Stewart. Isaiah Stewart plays the first 6, and then we let Marvin Bagley go, 11 minutes or whatever, and then you close out the first half with Isaiah Stewart. The coaching staff is going to have to just leave something on the table, regardless of who's in that spot, just because you're just not going to check every box.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's a flawed roster, right? And we all know it's a flawed roster. It should be a flawed roster because of where they're at. I think one of the most telling things from the interview with Rob Murphy last week, if you guys haven't listened to it, please go listen to that one and with George Blaha. But I thought it was interesting, Omari, he brought up we're at ground zero. I thought that was really interesting. He said it 3 times on the episode and not even really us directly asking about it. So it is a flawed roster in some way. Can you put a shooting lineup out there? Yes, we'll talk about it in the next segment. Can you put a lineup with a lob threat out there? Absolutely. Can you put a defensive lineup? Absolutely. But then something is going to be missing either with the rest of the rotation or even with that lineup. So let's go with the starting 5. We both agree we think the Pistons are going to start the season with. What rounds out the 10-man rotation, Omari? So Cade, Ivey, Bay, Stu, and Bagley. If that starts and Coach Casey only goes 10 deep in that game, who are the next 5 guys? And essentially then who is getting left out?
I think, again, you look at that center rotation, especially if you have a hard cap 10-person or 10-player rotation, there are probably some guys who you could make an argument for that should play that, maybe make it flexed out at that point. I think once again, assuming Alec Burks comes off of or does not start, he is probably guaranteed to have a pretty substantial role coming off of the bench, just given that he is a knockdown shooter, right? So I would think that Burks and Killian Hayes would probably be that bench backcourt. Franchise is still going to develop Killian, even if he doesn't start. Give him that opportunity to show that, if nothing else, he can at least be a really, really good backup point guard, which long-term is still a hole you want to fill. Those 2 players especially, I think, would probably get playing time. And I think Kelly Olynyk, and I know that there is some talk of the fan base about, well, is Kelly like the odd man out as far as the big rotation? But he's only big like a pass and shoot, and especially the shooting aspect, I don't think you can afford to not play any player who's at least an average shooter. And Kelly Olynyk's like a career, like 36, 37% shooter, even though he slumped last season. So I think Kelly plays. I think his ability to handle the ball, push the ball in transition, keeps his head up, can, find open shooters, and then also space the floor, probably outweighs whatever downside you get from playing him, whether it's defensive or whatever else, just because offensively you need that. You have guys that can protect the rim. You don't have a big that can shoot right now. And especially if Isaiah Stewart's not knocking them down, and I think that necessitates you play Kelly even more. So that's 3 spots right there.
You still got Livers, Hami, Kojo, Noel, Duren.
And that's the thing. I think that Isaiah Livers plays again because he can shoot. But then at that point, yeah, it's like, well, Corey Joseph, he's the veteran ball handler on the team. Is this a season where we begin to see his role reduced? Now that you have 3 young ball handlers on the team. And I think just minutes-wise, That is a strong possibility. How much do you want to play Jaden Ivey off ball? You probably want the ball in his hands a good bit, and I'm sure what he can do. So maybe you do have to reduce Corey Joseph's role. Like, I think that's a realistic possibility. So we'll see. Hami, again, we've talked about Hami, in the recent weeks on this show. He's in a unique spot. He was solid for him last season, but you have Jaden Ivey now. So a lot of what Hami was giving you, you're getting from a different player. So what role do you find for Hami if he's not knocking down threes and he's not necessarily like that one-on-one knockdown defender? I think he's got to do one of those things at least to secure his spot next season.
Yeah, I think we talk about, and this is me with Hami, the three-point shooting, but if he could really come around defensively, because he does offer just that energy. Offensively, he's going to grab offensive rebounds and cut and putbacks and those type of things. If he could become a really engaged and focused defender where he's not giving up backdoor layups and stuff like that, and almost like a lockdown, just lock into the other team's best perimeter player, especially against the second unit, that would be pretty valuable. So maybe it is the defense that's more important with Hami than the three-point shooting. I think I would go with Omari, Killian Hayes, and Alec Burks in the backcourt, just like you said, Isaiah Livers and KO. And then I think on opening night, we're going to see Nerlens Noel be the 5-man off the bench over Jalen Duren. Now, what you may see is Noel gets the first rotation with the bench, and then maybe Jalen Duren gets the second time. In the second half, when the second rotation time comes, Jalen Duren gets those minutes. But that would be my 10-man rotation on opening night. The starting lineup we talked about, and then Hayes, Burks, Livers, KO, and Noel. And it leads some guys off that you wonder, what do you do with Kojo, Hami, Duren, even Kevin Knox? And I want to ask this real quick. Here's the other thing, Amari. There's 17 guys on this roster right now, Amari, that I believe all have fully guaranteed contracts. That's okay. But in about a month, that's no longer going to be okay. What's going to happen with Kemba Walker, Omari? And who's the odd guy out? Because somebody else on this team that's currently on the roster is not going to be on the roster opening night.
I don't think Kemba Walker will be on the roster opening night. I still think Biles probably most likely as far as that. It's not a situation where, you got to get it done ASAP. Maybe Kemba has incentive to wait until he has something lined up. Yeah, I don't think Kemba's going to be on the roster one way or another. However that ends up resolving, because it still has to resolve, obviously. Beyond that, I think that, as you said, you've got all these guaranteed contracts, and I think it puts Saban in an interesting spot. The organization still, speaks very highly of him. He's one of the original four, along with Killian, Sadiq, and Isaiah. He's come in, at times he's definitely outperformed being a second-round pick. At the same time, you have Killian, you have Cade, you have Jaden, and he's sort of the fourth young ball handler in that group. So you wonder, one, where did the minutes come from? And then two, does he improve in the areas you want to see him improve in, whether it's shooting or just overall playmaking? And they've challenged him to be a lockdown defender as well. There's different ways he can carve out a role, but I think just from a best use of this spot standpoint, I think it puts a lot of pressure on Saban to have some sort of breakout, this season, really make his mark in camp, really hang on to that spot, just because he's the fourth young ball handler. Where do the minutes come from? And long term, what type of role does he feel for this team? We talked about Jaden Ivey's impact on Hami, but Saban as well. You have two athletic young point guards, neither of whom are great shooters at this point in their career. And long term, I don't think it's controversial to say that Jaden probably has a lot more upside. So we still have to see how that situation resolves. I'm not going to say now that Saban's definitely going to be the one on his way out, but I think just roster construction wise, he's got to show a lot now because he's got to show that he can coexist with these guys.
Yeah, I think the two that make the most sense would be Lee and Kevin Knox. And I know a lot of fans may not like to hear that about Kevin Knox, or maybe even Saban. I think Kojo is going to stay. I do think Hami stays. And I think Magruder stays because I think they brought him back for a reason, his veteran leadership. We talked about that with Rob Murphy as well. I think Knox and Lee comes down to those guys, but Knox probably has more potential to play because of the things you're talking about. Lee's competing to have the ball in his hands. And are you going to do that over the guys in Cade, Ivey, and Killian Hayes? I don't think you are. Knox at least has the potential to bring something this team needs in shooting. Now, I think it's a long road for him to get minutes because he's competing against Isaiah Livers, Hamidou Diallo in a way. If Kelly Olynyk ended up not on the roster, maybe there's some playing time for him. But I think it ends up being Saban Lee as well. I agree. I don't think Kemba Walker ends up on the opening night roster. I think it's in the Pistons' best interest. I think as fans, we should be hoping he finds a team that wants him. So that way he will give a little bit of money back and we can go ahead and buy him out. But I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's only really affecting this year's salary cap. And really, I don't think it's going to matter whether he gives back a couple $1 million or not, at least in terms of that. Before we move on, I do want to ask, what do you think the closing lineup will be on nights where they're trying to win games, Omari? So I realize this could go a couple different ways because we've talked about, they're at ground zero. They're still rebuilding. There's probably a little bit of position battling for where they're going to end up in the draft. But at the end of the day, I think, especially early in the season, they're going to compete to try to win as many games as they can. Who knows how many that ends up being. If on a night they're trying to win a game, there's 5 minutes left, it's a 4 or 5 point game, one way or the other, who are the 5 guys you think we'll see on the floor?
Cade, Sadiq, Isaiah. I don't think that's breaking news. I think those guys are going to be on the floor in most winning situations. Then again, those other 2 spots, I think a lot of it could just depend on matchups. But I think more than likely the Pistons will probably end up maybe leaning to go small.
Okay.
So I could absolutely see. Is this opening night or just over the course of the season?
Let's just say the first 20 games.
For the first 20 games, I can see Isaiah Livers playing his way into that spot, especially if he can defend opposing fours consistently. I think just shooting-wise, just defensively, it'll be hard to leave him on the bench in those situations. And then again, I can see Alec Burks as well. You have a vet out there. He can just knock down shots. You've got to maximize your spacing, give Cade room to operate. I think that probably just makes the most sense. I think those 5 guys to me gives you everything, not everything you need to close out games, but just from a shooting standpoint, defensive, giving players room to operate. You probably end up going small and you probably end up prioritizing shooting at that 2 spot and then at that 4 spot.
I think I agree. I think Alec Burks absolutely is going to be on the floor at the end of the games. We've talked about this a little bit. He may end up taking that Corey Joseph role a little bit because he can be a secondary ball handler behind Cade Cunningham, which we know Dwayne Casey likes. So he can kind of serve that purpose while also shooting the ball really well, which, actually Kojo did really well last season. And then it comes down to matchups. Are you playing the Cavs who have 2 bigs on the floor? So maybe you need 2 bigs on the floor. Are you playing another team that goes small? So you could go small with Isaiah Livers. I also do think there's going to be nights, Omari, if Jaden Ivey's playing well, I think he needs to stay on the floor just for developmental purposes. It depends on how much you want to win, but if he's playing well, I think he needs to stay out there, have some of those rookie growing pains in this season and figure those things out. So I think one thing that we've got through here early in the episode is Dwayne Casey has a lot of really tough decisions. I would love if we could get him or one of the assistant coaches on just to talk about the dynamics of how they're going to decide all these things. And we'll continue with some of those dynamics as we get into some more fun lineups. What's the best shooting lineup? What's the most switchable lineup? What's the highest pace and up-tempo lineup Dwayne Casey and staff can put on the floor? We'll get to that after this short break.
All right, hey, Carlos, just a quick idea. How about if I say, hey, this is Sean Windsor, and you say, hey, this is Carlos Smaros, and I'll go, and then we'll go back. You want to try that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Hey, this is Sean Windsor.
And this is Carlos Benares.
And we are the team behind Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean, where we are going to talk about, you guessed it, sports, but lots of other stuff. Like what, Carlos?
Oh, we're going to talk about your favorite subject, Sean, food. Probably more food. Arts, culture, sports, TV, movies, you name it. If it's happened in Detroit, we're going to talk about it.
And sometimes we're going to have guests in who obviously know a lot more than we do about just about everything. But we're going to have some free press journalists to talk about big stories, folks from the sports world. We're going to be out every Thursday. You can find this podcast wherever you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We hope you'll join us.
All right, we're back with the all lineups episode. And in segment 2, we're going to go through some more situational lineups. I think the first one, we've talked about this a good bit already, but their floor spacing lineup. You need 5 shooters on the floor, and you must have 1 big. What do you do in that situation? Because I already know right off the bat, I think the big swing question here is how well does Isaiah Stewart shoot it? Because if he can shoot, I think that solves basically every issue you reasonably could have at the 4 and 5, and that's the main thing going in. But I'll leave it to you, Bryce. You need 5 shooters on the floor. Which 5 guys are you picking?
I think right now I would go, based off what I know, Cade, Burks, Livers, Bay, and then I would go Kelly Olynyk at the 5. And it's not because I don't believe in what Isaiah Stewart's going to do, but we haven't necessarily seen it. And I know you can make that argument for Isaiah Livers, but I watched Isaiah Livers, or I've seen the stats on Isaiah Livers 4 years of college basketball knocking down threes as well. So that's where I would go right now. I do think you bring up a good point with Isaiah Stewart. Not only does the three-point shooting provide great value for what he brings offensively, it provides great value for this roster construction and this team overall. So to me, it goes hand in hand, that development with this three-point shot. But for me, for what this is, Cade, Burks, Livers, Bay, Kelly Olynyk.
I think I am aligned with that as well. And I think with Isaiah Stewart, we can't really give him the shooting nod yet just because he hasn't done it for an extended period of time. We've only seen him dabble with it over the last 8-10 games or so. And in Summer League, he was a full-time 4. But that's certainly more of a wait and see for me. I think there's a good chance early on that you play him as the shooting 5. And it's probably not going to click immediately. It may not be until later in the season that he gets fully comfortable with that shot. So, I would go Kojo, Cade for my backcourt. But actually, I don't know if I can do that. All right, I'm gonna start from the top and then work my way down. I'm going KO at the 5, Isaiah Livers at the 4, Sadiq at the 3. I feel like you have to go Burks at the 2 and then Cade at the 1. And I flexes Kojo out, but Kojo shot really well last year, so I think you could make an argument for Kojo or Burks in that lineup and probably be okay.
Kojo over Cade? Because that's the unpopular thing to say, but if you just look at percentages, and I know what people will say was, you don't have a creator. You could put Kojo in for Cade and put the ball in Alec Burks' hands.
You could, but you still have to. Well, this sounds disrespectful to the other guy. Like you still need your best player on the floor.
I agree. I agree. But if for the sake of what it is, like if it's literally you have to get a 3-pointer and there's 4 seconds on the clock. If you go by percentages, there's an argument for Cade Cunningham currently to not be on the floor in that situation. Now, I believe in the shot. It's going to be high volume. I get it. I'm just playing devil's advocate here to have some fun. And because I know Kojo just gets the fan base riled up. But
and also Cade just being a clutch shot maker in general. Yes. He may only be shooting like 33% on the season, but do you trust him to knock down a clutch 3, 2-minute stuff? Probably, yeah. So I think in those moments, you could trust that his percentages will go up.
And that's true with Sadiq Bey as well, Omari. Like there's some questions about his overall 3-point percentage. I think he has to get more consistent, but we've seen Sadiq Bey make a ton of clutch shots late in games. So I think that's true with him as well. And I had another guy I kind of had just in my notes was Rodney McGruder, because at the end of the day, McGruder's a guy who I just would trust in that situation as well. Like I just feel like he's the type of guy, he's a pro's pro is what that, Blaha likes to say. And I've kind of stolen it when I talk about Magruder as well. I think he could sit on the bench all game long. You could bring him in with 10 seconds left. And I would feel halfway confident that he would knock down a clutch 3 in that situation also.
No doubt. I mean, another player that could shoot. And I think there's actually maybe a little bit more flexibility here than you would think on paper. Again, Isaiah's the flex guy here. But there are some options, absolutely. I'm curious to see what you prioritize in those moments, just given that, especially I think 1 through 3, there's a lot of flexibility depending on which direction you go.
Yeah, and that's what we've talked about, right? Like, I've said this team lacks shooting, and people kind of get upset. Like, well, but you say this guy can shoot this. We're talking about shooting, but we also haven't talked about 2 of their young guards in Jaden Ivey and Killian Hayes. So, yes, you can prioritize shooting. Dwayne Casey can put shooting on the floor, but then you're not playing guys like Jaden Ivey, Killian Hayes, Jalen Duren, Nerlens Noel. And so, like, that's where the give and take comes into play. Let's move on to the next one, Omari. I think this one's kind of fun. Super switch. So the defensive lineup where you can just be as switchable as possible across the board. The caveat Wes put in for this one was you have to have a lead guard, so somebody that can handle the ball, and then you have to have at least one big guy. So what's the 5-player lineup if the Pistons wanted to go just complete switch across the board?
Yeah, I think the bookends of this lineup are Killian and Isaiah Stewart. Of course, Killian is probably their most defensively capable guard. And Isaiah Stewart, we talked about him switching a lot on there, so we don't necessarily need to go through that. But both of those guys, I think, give you super plus defenders at the 1 and the 5. So the middle, I think filling in the middle defensively is where you probably have a lot of differing opinion. I think Isaiah Livers is probably in that group. I think he's just a great team defender. As far as just all 5 guys being on the string, his communication, I think, is really important for that group. And you can plug him at the 3 or 4 probably and be fine. I think the question next is Jalen Duren a guy that you could play next to Isaiah, and how do they work defensively?
I did. I put him in it. I put him in my lineup, Amari.
Okay. Is that because you buy into it switching already, or do you just think rim protection-wise it makes up for it?
So there's a little bit of both, right? Like I think if you really are trying to be successful with this lineup, you want somebody that can protect the rim a little bit so he can do. I'm buying a lot of Jalen Duren stock long term. I'm extremely high on this kid. Again, my expectations for his rookie season are a tad bit lower. So if we're talking about this year, my buy into his switchability is not as high as it is long term, but I think there's more there. I think he's super athletic. I think he's going to be able to switch, and I just think it'd be those 2 guys on the floor together would be a lot of fun if that comes to fruition. So I did have those guys at the 4 and 5 for my lineup.
I think Isaiah Stewart's about 5. I think I'm intrigued by Duren being in that group. I don't think Duren is that switchable, so you're probably giving up something there. I don't know if I could buy into Jalen Duren being that guy quite yet, although I do think he can get there. I also wonder if Jalen Duren switching will be like, it's either like Rob Williams and like, maybe he's not the quickest guy on the perimeter, but he can just like block threes. So that kind of just solves a lot of problems in and of itself, because I haven't really seen bigs who can block threes like Rob Williams can. No, I think I'm just going to trust Isaiah Stewart. That's about 5. Killian, that's about 1. And then in the middle, Isaiah Livers. So now it's just like 2 and 3. I do like Cade defensively a lot. Maybe wasn't quite as consistent as you had won last year, but I think just what he was asked to do, it's understandable that there were some possessions that defensively it just didn't all quite come together. But I think I trust Cade defensively. I do think he'll be sort of like a Jimmy Butler, just like a really good 2-way guy. He's better than like a really good 2-way guy, but you get what I'm getting at. Like just one of the wings of the NBA who can really grind other guys down on defense when it comes down to it. And then my 3, I'm not sure, honestly. I'm not sure. Like I think that's where you just kind of have that X factor. Like, is Jaden Ivey already a difference maker defensively, and we could play him, and then you just bump Cade up to like maybe your 3 defensively, or Alec Burks is solid defensively, but like I don't think he's like a lockdown guy necessarily. There's a few different ways you can go on that. Hami could be the defensive guy in that lineup, and we've talked about his inconsistency on that end, but he certainly has the tools to really put it together and become more of a lockdown guy on that end. So I think Cade, Killian, Isaiah Stewart and Isaiah Livers are pretty set for me, but you could probably put a few different players in that 3 spot and make an argument and not be wrong. And I don't know if there's anyone I'm necessarily glued to at that 3 defensively.
No, I agree with that. I think that's a hard spot to fill in. And I didn't have Jaden Ivey in mind just because I don't think he's going to be super switchable. Again, this is going to be really interesting this year defensively because Nerlens Noel is not a switchable big. You've talked about like you're not sure Jalen Duren is. I don't know that Jaden Ivey switches on the bigs really well in his rookie season. So I'm very interested to see the scheme defensively that they use, that Jerome Allen implores this season for the Detroit Pistons. I thought this one was really fun as well. So Wes termed it the beat you up. So the most physically dominant lineup possible. You must have at least one lead guard in this lineup who, if the Pistons wanted to put out the most Detroit team they could, the bad boy team they could, who is in that 5-man lineup?
Killian Duren. Isaiah, if it's just we need guys who could just absolutely pound the opposing bigs and the opposing ball handler. I think those three players give you a leg up probably on a lot of rosters. We talk about Killian on offense, but defensively, there's a lot of guards who defend as physically as he does. And honestly, there were times last season where I was like shocked the refs didn't call fouls. So I'm curious to see how much leeway he gets on that next season. Now that maybe the book's out on him a little bit more. But those three players, I think you start with for sure. And then again, I think sort of at those wing spots, you can make arguments for a few different players. But as far as his physical dominance, I think Hobby has the tools to be that. And then after that, I mean, Cade's put on some weight this offseason. Maybe Cade's a guy that can, he moves his feet well enough and he could just kind of wear guys down defensively. Or, Sadiq Bey, maybe he makes a leap defensively this season and he's in that role. So again, I'm not necessarily glued to anyone at that 3 spot, but I think I'll probably just pick Cade just because we've seen him have a lot of really good defensive possessions that he can get to that point. From 5 through 1, I'm going Duren, Isaiah, Cade, Killian, and Hami.
Yeah, so I went Hayes and Hami in the backcourt. I actually put Sadiq Bey in there just because he's freaking jacked. And so I kind of was just physically opposing. And then Isaiah Stewart. And then I went Kelly Olynyk just because I feel like Kelly Olynyk is one of those dudes that just gets into scuffles and, those type of things. So yes, Jalen Duren physically matches this criteria a little bit more, but I think those 5 guys could really, and honestly, I think you could put Rodney Magruder in there for Bey, and that would just be an extremely annoying team to play against. So Killian and Hami with Rodney Magruder, Stewart, and KO, tell me that team is not getting in a fight or an argument or something. Those 5 guys would be annoying as heck to have to try to score against. I don't know how well they score the ball offensively. You could maybe have enough floor spacing with KO, Magruder, and if Stu can space it, Hami with, cutting the ball and bringing that. But I think those guys would be really annoying to play against. So that was a fun one. I'm glad that Wes put that one in there. We'll keep moving, and let's stay on the defensive side. 10 seconds left, Omari. Your only goal is to get a stop. So you got to put your best 5-man defensive lineup out there. It doesn't have to be switchable, doesn't have to be the most physical. You just have to get a stop. We're calling the timeout after the stop, and we can sub. So offense doesn't matter. What is the best 5-man defensive lineup you can put out there?
Yeah, best 5-man lineup I could put out there. Isaiah Stewart, Killian, once again, I think you start there. Now, here's maybe where I buy the Jalen Duren's upside a little bit, just as there's some block shots you're going to be able to reach that maybe no one else on the roster can. And just him as just an imposing presence in general. Maybe I do buy into Jalen Duren here. We're just batting for upside here, right? We just need all of our difference makers in. Just height, wingspan. I think you want Jalen Duren behind Isaiah Stewart, and Isaiah Stewart can kind of roam a little bit more. And again, every time we get to that 2 and 3 spot, there's not a perfect answer necessarily.
I think it's telling, right? The fun thing about this episode and going through this exercise is you accidentally almost walk into the flaws and where there needs to be some improvement on this roster moving forward. Again, it's not a critique. We all understand where the organization is at, but it's just kind of funny that you keep ending up with the same issues.
I think you go Hami. I think just the same as the Duren argument. You probably just want to gamble on athleticism a little bit. Maybe, there are players who can make plays that others can't. So I would give Hami the nod. And again, I think you still need Cade in that group. Just we saw Cade make clutch plays on offense and defense last year. He wasn't afraid to take charges and do some of the dirty work here and there. So I think, again, I think any defensive lineup, it's really hard to leave Cade out of it just because he makes clutch defensive plays. He got clutch steals last year. We saw clutch blocks. We saw him do a lot of stuff on that end of the floor with 2 minutes left. So I would absolutely put Cade in that lineup.
Yeah, I got Killian and Cade in the backcourt. I actually would put Rodney Magruder in the game. I have Isaiah Livers because I do think he's a great team defender. And then it's really interesting, Omari. The name that along with Cade, and we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, Isaiah Stewart has essentially shown up in every single one of these lineups. It just speaks to what he can do. And I can't help, again, I know I keep referencing it, but Rob Murphy talked about playing Detroit basketball. And what did he tell us Detroit basketball was? defense, and rebounding. And it just makes you think that they're really bought into Isaiah Stewart and what he brings. And again, it's funny as you go through this exercise, you kind of just stumble into things. And one thing I feel like we stumbled into, it's not just Cade and Bay that are in every lineup. It seems like Isaiah Stewart is in every lineup. Now, one lineup he may not be in is this next one, which is 3 minutes left, you're down 10. What is the most up-tempo, athletic, exciting, just run up and down the floor lineup you can put together in that situation?
Yeah, so just like scores 105-95, 3 minutes left in the fourth. You're just trying to go all out, come back win.
Like pick up the pace, play as fast as possible. Who are you putting out there to run up and down the floor?
I mean, I think Jaden Ivey and Cade is probably my backcourt, which is, for the most part, I think pretty self-explanatory. And you probably have to project a little bit for Jaden, like what's he going to give you. But, from athleticism, ball handling, just pressure in the rim, maximizing those transition opportunities. Jaden Ivey might be the best on the roster as far as that. I mean, that's why they drafted him. That's why he was, a projected top 4 pick who everybody was surprised stepped to the Pistons at 5. So I would start with those two, absolutely. I mentioned Marvin Bagley in a while, but, of course, his strength is offense, athleticism, just getting buckets in general. So I think Marvin might be your 5 if you're just trying to score, honestly. But you could probably go Kelly Olynyk and Marv as your front court because you just need shooting and some passing as well. Yeah, I think I would probably go Jaden, Cade, KO, Marvin, and then the 3 is Sadiq. And I think probably those 5 offensively. You have at least 3 players who can shoot, which maybe shooting wise you want a little bit more. So I could actually make an argument for Isaiah Livers over KO. Maybe just more of just like a knockdown, catch and shoot type of player, and maybe you're getting a little bit more in transition as well. That's like a coin flip to me. I could go Livers or KO in that lineup, but I think the other 4, Sadiq, Jaden, and Cade. I think that probably gives you your best shot offensively along with Marvin.
It was interesting, right? We brought up Marvin Bagley at the very beginning of the episode talking about the starting lineup, and then we haven't mentioned him a whole lot as we've progressed throughout the episode until now. What's really funny, Omari, we took different approaches with this. I feel like you kind of went with the shooting lineup, and I completely ignored shooting whatsoever and just went total athleticism. So I went Killian Hayes and Jaden Ivey in the backcourt, Hami at the 3, Cade at the 4. So I just went super, super small. And then Marvin Bagley the 3rd at the 5. So I kind of took a different approach because there's not a lot of shooting in that lineup, but I feel like we can get out and run, play small. You have the lob threat with Marvin Bagley the 3rd. And, and Hami running around doing his thing. Ivy, obviously, there is an argument somewhere in there for Jalen Duren to be on the floor if you're going, uber athletic. So I thought it was interesting listening to you go through yours that we kind of took different approaches to that situation. You with the shooting and me more with just the uber athleticism.
I think you have to have shooting. Like, I think anytime you're trying to close any type of gap, I think a lot of times when you see teams close those gaps rapidly, it's because somebody got hot from 3 and you just knocked down 3 threes in the span of 50 seconds or whatever. I think I like your lineup, but I think if it's like with a 10-point gap, you can't rely on transition as much. There might be some grounded out possessions where you just need to get a 3 off of 4 seconds left. And that's where Cade, that's where Livers, that's when, Sadiq, obviously, that's when you need those players to kind of just be able to hit shots. And those guys are all shot makers, especially Sadiq and Cade, who wasn't both of our lineups, obviously. But I think just the other way around. Well, Sadiq wasn't your lineup, right? Or was he not?
Sadiq wasn't, so it
was not. Yeah, I thought, because you had Cade and then Bagley as your 4 and 5.
Yeah, so I mean, you could essentially say, I have Hayes, Ivy, Hami, Cade, Marvin Bagley. None of those guys are proven NBA 3-point knockdown guys right now, right? Cade was barely over 30%. We know Hami, Killian, Ivy, we haven't seen it. Bagley had 1 year where I think he was mid-30s. So shooting is definitely not a strength of that lineup. So your point is fair. I was just trying to go the most up-tempo, fastest, uber athletic lineup I could put out there.
For sure. Yeah, I think you got to have threes. I think, if the game gets slowed down for whatever reason, and of course the team would up 10 points is going to make a point to slow it down. It may just come down to just being able to hit some really tough threes. So I think I'm probably gambling going to the 3-point upside a little bit more than just getting up and down the floor. And if the transition opportunities are there, you still have Cade, you still have Jaden, you still have Marvin. You can make that happen. But I want every player to be able to hit a tough shot on some level. And I think those 5 players probably give you your best chance at doing that.
Okay, before we go to a quick break and then come back, bring Wes on to do everybody's favorite game, Sheet or Sham. I have one question about a final lineup. Cade, Ivey, Bay, Stu, and Duren. So this is 5 of the first-round picks in the last 3 years. Obviously does not include Killian Hayes. How much do you think we see that lineup in, let's say, the first 20 games of the season, Omari? I think we all believe we're going to see it post-All-Star break, post-trade deadline. How much do we see that young lineup of those core young players in the first 20 or so games? Do you think we see it on a nightly basis for a few minutes? Do you think we see it more often than that? Or do you think we see it not at all?
So I think Cade, Ivey, Bay, Stewart, we will see. I don't know about frequently, but I think we'll see it enough to where it's not notable when it happens. Of course, those are 4 first-round picks. I think it just makes sense. It's just probably your top 4 young players from a skill standpoint right now. I think Duren is the swing option here because how much do we see him in those first 20 games? I could see them making a point to get him in early, just show what you can do. And if he's missing defensive rotations, he's not boxing out, he's just not doing the small stuff you need to do to be a successful big, maybe then they wind it back and they say, okay, we're going to get you some Motor City Cruise reps. We're going to keep you involved, keep your energy up. You're still going to get reps. But just make it clear to him, these are the things you have to do to succeed in the NBA. Like, he'll be 18 years old on opening night, so I think they'll take the long view on him as far as his development. But it wouldn't surprise me if he got some opportunities early on, just to show that maybe he's ahead of whatever schedule you think he's at. And of course, his performance in camp will play into that as well. So I think we'll see it, but in the first 20 games, I think it really comes down to how much Duren is ready for that role. Because they're not purely in win now mode right now, but they're still going to try to teach good habits and not just let them go out there and do whatever. So Duren's got to hold up his end on this one. The other 4 players I do think we'll see on the floor enough to where it's not rare. Like we'll see it here and there.
Yeah, I agree. I can't help but be excited about the possibility of seeing those 5 guys on the floor together, and I hope we do early in the year. I tend to agree with you. I don't, the crew season doesn't start till a little bit later anyway, so I think we could see Duren get those early reps, and luckily training camp is coming upon us very soon now, Omari, so we'll get some of that and get your insights coming out of that. But for right now, we are going to play Sheet or Sham when we come back from this short break.
I'm Alyssa Robinson for the Detroit Free Press. When you wake up every morning, what's the first thing you do? Check your email? Me too. And when you sign up for our daily briefing newsletter, you'll get all the latest news sent directly to your inbox so you can wake up and be ready for the day. We also have newsletters about COVID-19 in Michigan, the latest entertainment headlines, as well as Woodward 248, a newsletter specifically for people living and working in Southeast Oakland County. And don't forget about automotive headlines and all the latest news from our Michigan sports teams. We have a newsletter for every personality and preference. Just head to freep.com/newsletters to sign up for any one of these great options and more.
Before we bring Wes on to play another game of Sheet or Sham, I do want to give a shout out. This comment and review was left on Apple a couple weeks ago. We haven't got to it because of our guest, but from Josh31 says, absolutely love the show and look forward every Tuesday. The chemistry between Omari and Bryce is great, and even though nothing is going on, they still fill the show with Pistons and NBA news and other random things that are entertaining. Thank you both, but I can't sign off on peanut butter and Lay's. I agree with you, Josh. Thank you very much. And just to all of our listeners, please don't hesitate to leave us a review. Leave us a 5-star rating on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen. Leave comments on DBD, wherever you are listening, wherever you're getting to this on the Freep website. please let us know what you're thinking. Send us an email, Twitter, whatever it is, but leave us some of those reviews and those ratings. That's the best way to support us and help us continue to grow.
100%. We love interacting with you all. We love hearing the feedback. So if you enjoy the show, we know that there's many of you. We see the interaction on Twitter and on the Detroit Bad Boys page, which maybe I need to get an account on there at some point so I can go back and forth a little bit as well. But please don't hesitate. Reach out to tell us how you feel. We always like seeing the feedback.
Let's take this away. I know we have a tiebreaker to finish from the last time we played Sheet or Sham, so I'm interested to see how this is going to play out.
We do. And obviously you all know the game, right? So Sheet is true, Sham is false. But last time we ended on that tie. So this first question is going to decide the last one. And Omari, you won the first game. So this is either to tie our series or Omari, you take a 2-0 lead. And it's going to count towards the total on this round as well. So I think Omari, this one's going to you first. So Sheet or Sham, the Pistons averaged more points per game in their losses than they did their wins.
Sheet feels counterintuitive, but that makes me want to go. That makes me want to go Sheet. I'm going Sheet.
I'll happily go Sham.
Sheet.
Shut up.
Sheet. All right, there we go. Yeah, and I felt like a
They
Sheet.
averaged almost 115 in their losses and only about 107 in their wins.
Wow. Okay, I would definitely want to dig into that as to why. Maybe they just had a lot of shootouts that they just couldn't quite hang in.
It's too early in the morning for this mind manipulation here, Wes.
They scored 8 more points in losses than in wins. That is okay. That's weird. I can't even think of an explanation for that. I'm sitting here trying to rationalize it, and I could not. That does not make sense. But that's why it was a good sheet. I was like, the fact that it's a prompt makes it true, because I asked what you asked that. That was a sheet. I could feel the sheet.
You can't say sheet in that situation, though. I was the same way. He would only ask this if it was true, but you just can't say sheet because it just defies logic and common sense. But the fact
if you want to make that your strategy, by all means, go ahead.
Are you saying Wes is an illogical person?
I'm saying Wes is good at coming up with prompts that you would not even think would be prompts. That's one where it's I had not even thought about that until now. And the fact that the disparity was that big, I thought it was going to be in losses, they scored 107.2 points, and in wins, they scored 107.1 points. I didn't think it would be an 8-point gap.
So agreed. That's what I thought too. If it was a point per game or half or something, Wes is notorious for that. 8 points a game difference is pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's way more than I thought.
So where are we at? Well, after all of this craziness, where are we at with the total win-loss and then for today's game?
So now, Omari, in the series, you've won 2 Sheet or Sham games. Bryce, you've won 0. And in terms of this game, 1-0.
Awesome.
All right, there we go.
But you get the question first, Bryce. And since we're talking about kind of weird, potentially manipulative ones, I think you guys will like it. So, Sheet or Sham, Saturday was the only day of the week that the Pistons did not have a losing record on last season.
Sheed.
Sheet.
Ha!
They were 500. Every other day they had a losing record. Saturdays they played 500 basketball.
Perfect. I'm coming up for a Saturday game in November, so hopefully I see a dub.
They're going to lose because you're there.
You can't say that.
Yes, I can say that. Yes, I can. That'll be their one Saturday loss. The rest are going to be dubs. Which game is it? You know,
Celtics are coming to town.
Oh, Jesus,
that's a revenge game. Yeah, the Celtics are going to come in the Pistons played us like the Milwaukee Bucks last season, so we're going to come up.
Sadiq Bey kills the Boston Celtics. Sadiq Bey kills the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. That might be his next 50 ball.
Yes, sir. All right, Wes. 1-1, right?
1-1. Omari, this was going to you first. Sheed or Sham? The Pistons were in the top half of the league in pick and rolls run per game last season.
See, I feel like they weren't doing a lot of pick and roll until Christmas. So I'm going to go Sham.
I'm going to go Sham also.
It is Sham. You guys both got. So they were 18th. They were running about 17.5 per game. And in terms of points per possession, too, they were 29th.
29th?
In points per possession. Yeah.
Wow.
For those pick and rolls.
I bet that went way up after they got Marvin.
Yeah, that would be interesting. That would be a really interesting stat to see what they were I mean, I realize there's only one spot lower to go, but like what the point per possession actually was pre-Marvin Bagley and what it was post-Marvin Bagley. I'm sure somebody can look that up. I don't have access to Synergy, but somebody does that listens to the podcast, surely.
Next one. Bryce, I'm going to ask you first. So Sheed or Sham, the Pistons averaged more than 45 drives per game as a team.
That seems really low, but I have no idea what league average is. So I'm going to say, you said more than?
More than.
Sheed.
Yeah. I wish I knew like what the average is.
Yeah, that seems low to me for some reason.
I'm going to go Sham because I'm just thinking about how many like elite cutters, elite like on ball, getting to the rim guys there are in the league, and that the Pistons aren't even close to having one. Well, maybe they have one now in Jaden, but last season they weren't even close to having one as far as like volume.
Trey Lyles was getting to the paint all the time when he was here using that pump fake.
Yeah, against G League guys. Yeah, I'm going Sham. I think they have fewer than 45.
Sheed, they were actually 7th in the league with 49.9.
Okay.
Really?
Wow. Told you Trey Lyles bumped that up.
He may have, honestly. Yeah, he was getting a lot of bigs off guard. But
Am I winning right now, Wes?
You're up 1. And you get this next question first.
I think I blew the lead last time, though.
But that was when we got into the movie stuff.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't fair.
There's no movie stuff this week, so you should be okay.
Perfect.
And this question's for you, too, because it's called your guy Isaiah Livers. So Sheed or Sham, Isaiah Livers was the only non-two-way player on the roster last season to have a positive plus-minus just on the year.
Sham.
the only non-two-way player that had a positive plus minus.
Yep.
All right, now I got to take a moment to think.
Again, I wish we had video to show you guys because the Amari head drop whenever that question happened was hilarious.
I was like, I feel like both of you watch VeggieTales. There's a gif of like Larry the cucumber doing like a thinking face. Like that was my face right there, just like the camera pan. And zoom
Larry
in.
the who?
I think that's his name. Yeah, it's like Bob the tomato and Larry the cucumber. VeggieTales. You ever seen VeggieTales?
No.
It seems like a Kansas thing for some reason. Like I feel like people in Kansas love VeggieTales.
Oh my gosh, VeggieTales.
Answer
Answer the question. You forgot it already.
No, I didn't. But can you repeat it just in case?
Isaiah Livers was the only non-two-way player on the roster to have a positive plus minus on the year.
That sounds false. That sounds false, but why would he be the only one? And he also only played like 19 games, and he was pretty productive in those games. And he also like started playing right when the Pistons were good. So whatever. This feels wrong, but I'm going to go Sheed.
Go Sham. He was a minus 0.5. Oddly enough, though, the two-way players were both positives. They were the only ones, but they were both positives.
Everybody else was negative. Including Isaiah Livers. Okay. Yeah, I could have talked myself into Isaiah being the only one. I was like, they were bad, so I'm sure really realistically probably nobody had a plus minus on like the main roster. But if it was gonna be anyone, I would have guessed Isaiah Livers just because he only played 19 games during like the best part of the season from
he was the closest
winning standpoint. So he was the closest. I felt off, but Isaiah Livers was a good pick. Like the bait would have been like Cade Cunningham because reflexively you're going to be like, well, it's Cade. So first he had a positive plus minus, but no, he was on the floor way too much and too many losses to have a positive plus minus. So Isaiah Livers would have been the only one. So it's like I'll just take my L. I'll accept my L.
How many questions do you have left here, Wes?
3. They're all related to food.
Okay. Let's hit those quick. That gives Amari a chance to come back.
I'm down 2, right?
Yeah, you're down 2.
Cool. You're down 2. So, Amari, you first. Sheed or Sham, the jalapeno pepper is closer to the banana pepper in terms of hotness than it is the habanero on the Scoville ratings.
That's a good one. You know what? I was at Dally in the Alley yesterday, and that's a festival in Midtown Detroit.
I saw your Facebook, and I was like, I need to ask him about this because I have no idea where he's at or what he's doing.
I also don't know why my Instagram stories keep posting to Facebook. Like I tried to turn that off, and then Instagram was like, "Nope, we're putting everything on Facebook." I'm trying not to use Facebook for the last few years. They had like a hot sauce stand, and the hot sauce like they were like on hot ones, and I sampled a habanero one and like a jalapeno one. I'm trying to think of like the Scoville units that were on the bottle. Like I'm trying to summon that, and I'm never trying to hurry up because we're already past time of the pod. But the last few ones were shorter, so we're making up for it now. Closer to a banana pepper or a jalapeno? I'm going to go, is Sheed closer to the habanero and Sham closer to the banana pepper?
Sheed would be closer to the banana pepper.
I'm going Sheed.
I'll go Sham because I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
It's Sheed.
There we
So
go.
the jalapeno can get up to like 10,000 on the Scoville rating. The banana pepper's only 500.
Yeah.
But habanero is like over 100,000. It's really good.
That's what I was thinking. Like habaneros are just like, as far as spicy peppers, they're definitely on the higher end. Like not like ghosts, but they're definitely higher. So okay, cool. That was a gut feeling one. So I have 2 more, and I need to get both of these to win.
Bryce, you first. Sheed or Sham? McDonald's was the first fast food hamburger chain.
Disgusting. I hate McDonald's. I have a really good McDonald's story, not for this episode, but maybe some other time, from when I was in college. Sham.
The very first burger chain.
Fast food burger chain. Yep.
So they're like obviously the most well known, but I feel like there had to have been one before them. I'm gonna go Sham.
It is Sham. Bryce, I thought you might know it because White Castle was the first, and they're Kansas.
I don't know. White Castle started in Kansas. I've actually never even been to White Castle.
Me either.
You're not missing
I'm a
anything.
little afraid.
You're not missing anything.
All right, so I'm up 1, and we have 1 question left. So Amari has a chance here to tie it up.
Sheed or Sham? Omari, this is you first. The bananas we eat today are not the same bananas that were eaten in like the 1940s and 50s.
Sheed.
I want to say Sheed because that's what I think it is, but then I just automatically win. So I'm going to go Sham just for the sake of the game.
It was Sheed.
All right, there we go.
Stupid
There
game.
was like a fungus or something that wiped out all the bananas in the 1950s.
Wow. What?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, I know bananas have. I mean, all right. I'm just gonna sound like an idiot. I'm not gonna get into what I think happened to bananas. I'm just gonna say I knew the bananas had changed, but I wasn't sure why.
Some natural
I think it was a
evolution
fungus.
with bananas. That's what you were thinking?
No, I was not like natural evolution. I was thinking like food scientists have like done a lot with fruit to like make
genetically
them more,
engineer them in some way. Sure.
make them more appetizing, make them more resistant to pesticides, like this and that. And like I was just reading something about bananas a while back, and like I knew that they had changed. I just wasn't exactly sure how.
Possibly they're more bland, not as sweet now.
They're more bland now?
Yeah, I guess the other one had more flavor. Obviously, I've never had one. But
I am
a banana.
from the 19th.
Bananas from the 40s.
I was gonna say, I mean, yeah, you're like 24, so you know, it kind of goes without saying. It's like a banana in general. Wow, I guess
This segment went off the rails more than any segment we've had. I hope people enjoyed it. We've had a lot of laughs here on a Sunday morning, early on a Sunday morning. So hope you guys enjoyed that. As Amari said, we went a little long, but hopefully it makes up for the last couple episodes that were a little bit shorter. We got training camp coming up soon. We're going to continue to provide you guys high-level content. And then when the season comes, obviously, it's going to be a lot of fun being Pistons fans. Continue to listen to the Pistons Pulse. Thank you for your support. Omari, take it away, my guy.
Shout out to our editor, Kerry Jr. II, our executive producer, Anjanette Delgado, and our sports editor, Kirkland Crawford. Also, big thanks to Wes for leading us through today's Sheed or Sham. We'll see you all next week.